you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock. You are listening to the Altered History series. This is episode 8, Civilization Cycles. In this episode, I will be going over some oddities, irregularities, and the mysterious knowledge that ancient civilizations all over the world theoretically isolated from each other, according to the mainstream official narratives, and how they had some of this knowledge that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense in examining whether or not there were worldwide civilizations. Were there more than one? And how do they cycle? And are we nearing the end of another cycle right now? As always, if you enjoy the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. If you like the podcast, hit the like button, share it across social media platforms. You could also just go to youtube.com/Mindshock to manually see all of the podcasts and videos if they're not coming up in notifications. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. You could also check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case, topic, logical analysis, co-podcast, or requests. Depending on your tier, you could also be a guest on the podcast. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to address, which is something that hasn't really been addressed too often from what I've seen even in these alternate histories and various different conspiracy theories, even Atlantean conspiracy theories, whether or not Atlantis was a worldwide civilization or not, or if it was just one continent, one type isolated civilization that predated others or overlapped. And again, this is Mindshock. We don't fall for black and white fallacies here, or try to not to fall for any kind of logical fallacies. Obviously, more than one thing can be true. If Atlantis did exist, it could have been a worldwide civilization. If it didn't exist, and whether or not it was a worldwide civilization, it could have also overlapped with the existence of other civilizations. Whether you're talking Lemuria or any of these even older civilizations, or even so-called modern man. So-called modern man. Now, what I haven't seen discussed extensively, of course, the ancient Egyptians, the Mesopotamians, Babylonians, these civilizations that are now modern day Egypt, Iraq, Iran, what is the landscape here? They appear to be desert wastelands, so to speak, with obviously oases and various irrigation that was introduced at various time periods, and modern technology like Dubai, where it's, modern technological architectural marvels. But in general, you're looking at areas of the world that are not particularly green and luscious. Like the Amazon, still a jungle, theoretically, the way it was quite some time ago. But again, looking at Iraq, Iran, Egypt, these are desert wastelands. Now, without going into the really, really insane rabbit holes of desert sand being the blood of former titans or giants in a cataclysm that turned it to desert, let's put that aside for a moment, although I will be tackling titans and giants in other podcasts. We have one Mindshock podcast on giants, the general podcast. If you haven't checked it out, you can check that out. But I'll be doing a more dedicated episode, or possibly series of episodes, on titans, giants, and what that all entails within the scope of altered history, which is what this podcast series is about. But in general, if you were this worldwide power, the height of civilization and advancement of your time, would you be based in a desert area? Now, that's a very difficult question with many variables at play there. But I find that curious because it seems to me that if you were one of the most incredible civilizations ever, certainly of your time period, it seems to be that it would be more of Atlantean in style, where you would have a lot of greenery, just a lot of agriculture. It would be clean. It wouldn't be a desert wasteland, so to speak. So the question is, here's the question. There are always plenty of questions to ponder on the Mindshock podcast. Is it possible? Again, we have the Piri-Reis map and some of these supposedly anomalous maps that show even the Antarctica coastline in green, grass covered. So is it possible before some kind of cataclysm? Now, again, whether this cataclysm was caused by some kind of alien technology or interdimensional technology or whatever technologies of the time that humans possessed, who knows? Tartaria, Lemuria, the Atlanteans fighting the Lemurians. I mean, there's so many different theories out there. That's actually one of them, where one of the cataclysms was the Atlanteans fighting the Lemurians with their advanced weaponry, possibly having something to do with aliens or interdimensional entities, possibly not, possibly just humans with different types of technologies that have been hidden or lost. So is it possible that the Babylonians, the Egyptians, this Middle Eastern high powers were, at one point, it was green country, so to speak. They were not desert wastelands. They were jungle. Is it possible? Similar to the Amazon, similar to some North American forests. And then something happened where some kind of weapons or whatever turned it to a desert wasteland. I believe that's a very interesting question. I believe it's also difficult to answer. But just judging again from all these other civilizations, it seems like it's a very real possibility that these civilizations might have been worldwide, and those particular bases or cities, citadels, capitals, however you want to label them with the limited real information that we have, if they were once luscious and green, what does that mean? Now, tying that into, let's say, the Mayans, who believe the world has already ended 7 or 8 times, now their meaning of end is it's the end of a cycle. It's not the end of everything. So even if we're going by Mayan End Times prophecy, with all the mistranslations, it's not really the end of everything. It's the end of a cycle. Are we nearing the end of a cycle, or reset, as some mud flood researchers are calling it? Is that what was prophesized? Is that December 20th or December 21st, 2020? We don't know. That's all up to debate, of course. Pretending to know either way pretending to know either way is quite silly. That's why the motto of this podcast is the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. So it's very tricky, but a lot of these ancient civilizations all had the same stories. All had the same stories about the world beginning and ending, previous civilizations rising and falling. Now, here's what I believe connects a lot of the dots that have remained unconnected by modern archaeology and modern so-called historians. Obviously, these are all scientism priests in one way or another, where it's just the dogmatic worshipping of authorities and those that came before, and building these house of cards with a vested interest in not re-examining the base layers of the house of cards, because then it could all come crashing down. It seems very possible, you could even say likely, highly likely, that there were many iterations of worldwide civilizations. Now, just to postulate, let's say the previous iteration might have been Tartaria. Let's say the iteration before that could have been the Atlanteans. The one before that, the Lemurians. And then onward and onward, backwards through history. Is it possible they were all worldwide civilizations with various types of advanced technologies? Now, by advanced, it's like if anybody's ever played those old Civilization games, and they got pretty intricate by, I believe, Civ 5. They really got into it, where you develop different technologies in different directions. So it's not necessarily that one civilization is blatantly more advanced than another. They've just chosen to focus on developing different types of technology. So it seems possible that some of these previous civilizations, they didn't really go into the nanotech, computerized technologies, but they might have had other free energy, advanced energy type technologies, possibly based more on spirituality or telekinetic, telepathic abilities, things of that nature, or just developing obviously into unknown unknowns, things that we can't really even think about because we don't know, because they've either been suppressed or lost. So again, that's not really a stretch to anybody utilizing basic logic or reason. So if there were all these worldwide civilizations and they all just cycle and come to an end, what does that mean really? Does that change our understanding of history? Because of course, the ego of modern humans, the hubris, the lessons unlearned from the Greeks, it's really, really bizarre how so many humans are so hopelessly indoctrinated into the cult of state and authority worship and scientism. They can't comprehend the possibility that so-called experts, historians, scientists, archaeologists, whoever, whatever, that they're wrong, that they've built a lot of these houses of cards and the base layers are simply wrong, not accurate. They're working with the wrong information, and they're extrapolating other information from wrong information. Now, again, let's not fall for black and white fallacies. That doesn't mean that certain pieces of the puzzle aren't true. I mean, again, when you have, within the field of archaeology, you have these remains and artifacts. You have possible Egyptian artifacts in the Grand Canyon. You have all of these anomalies, so to speak. Now, the coincidence theorists, they just sweep that all under the rug and pretend it doesn't exist, attempt to explain it away, whatever, to cling desperately to their dogmatic narrative of whatever they were indoctrinated with as children. They don't want to shake that up too much, because it takes a fair bit of mental strength and overcoming cognitive dissonance to even entertain the new possibilities, or that whatever you've learned is just a house of cards that will come crumbling down upon further inspection, upon logical scrutiny of those base layers. So is it possible that a lot of these artifacts that have been found, I mean, at different layers, you have Egyptian artifacts, you have possible Atlantean artifacts, Tartarian artifacts, whatever's been hidden, suppressed, or just undiscovered, as of yet undiscovered. And there was supposedly, and I will be going more to a more dedicated podcast on these South American treasures of supposedly an Atlantean civilization found in caves, and all of this knowledge has been suppressed, of course, but there are crumbs here and there. Is it possible that they had knowledge of the previous civilization, possibly the one before, but would they really have knowledge of the first, of the second, of the third? It's really bizarre. So if we try to tie it in with these Greek myths and the rule of the Titans, which another thing I find very interesting that very few people are talking about, is supposedly the golden age of man. The golden age was under the rule of the Titans. Not the gods. The gods that came after, now you see a decline in human existence. You see Bronze Age, Silver Age, Copper Age. You see the decline, but the Golden Age was previous under the Titan. Are we de-evolving per se? Where all of these further civilizations, humans are living, let's, for lack of a better word, worse? Let's say, was the lifespan of humans really in the 1,000-year range of perfect health? Perfect awareness, awakened third eyes, the pineal gland not calcified, more possibly the genetics of humans being capable of much more. It's really interesting to think about. It kind of impossible to prove with the limited information we have, but looking at things from new angles can lead us to new theories, and if not the truth, at least eliminating certain theories. And that could have value as well. particularly eliminating theories that have dogmatically basically enslaved institutions, enslaved original and free thinking, where anybody talking anything other than the dogmatic institutional narrative is immediately called crazy or criticized, appeal to incredulity, logical fallacies thrown their way, things of that nature, just the coincidence theorist dismissal of conspiracy theory, aka critical thinking. Now, circling back again to these previous civilizations, if they were all worldwide, if there was more than one previous worldwide civilization, does that explain all the anomalies in archaeology? All these things that were found that supposedly can't be found. Now, I'm not going to go into the problems with carbon dating and other dating technologies, because when you put your blind faith in these fallible human technologies and these fallible human theories that get disproven every generation or two, it's problematic, because then you start building these houses of cards again. I mean, there's anomalous things that are found supposedly dated millions of years. How can we verify that age? But let's say it is true. If it is true, were there advanced worldwide civilizations millions of years ago? I mean, a lot of this stuff can really break your brain. But just on a let's make the box a little smaller, just for the sake of simplicity here, to really entertain these notions. How did this knowledge survive? Now you have again. I talk about the Library of Alexandria. Often it was burned, looted, whatever. Was that just a diversion? Would they really keep the most secret of secret texts in a publicly known library that was traveled to from across the realm by all different people and members of societies and civilizations for its knowledge? And again, what is hidden in the Vatican archive? Does the Vatican archive have remnants of previous worldwide civilizations? Not just one, maybe two or three or four. And are there mentions of previous civilizations that existed even before that? Now, with mud flood theory, which we really go into primarily for this podcast series, we're going into remnants of buildings and architecture styles of basically Greco-Roman type temples. You have Greek temples in almost every major city in the world. Why? It's strange, particularly in some of these areas, Australia, Southeast Asia, Africa, where it just wouldn't make sense to build these gigantic temples. And then if you're looking at photographs from over 100 years ago of buildings that have since been destroyed, I mean, they are architectural marvels. In some of these places, Salt Lake City and elsewhere on the west in the U.S., I mean, they were a couple of Morbins with a wagon. I mean, how could they have built? And you look at the other structures they're building, I mean, basically like just basic wood, old west clapboard type constructions that are very, very basic. And then you have a Greek temple next to it with these extraordinary pillars. And it doesn't really make any sense. But these are remnants of what? The previous worldwide civilizations, if it was Tartaria? Or is it the one before that? Is it Atlantean in nature? Because Atlantean, within myth and legend, the Atlanteans are typically depicted as Poseidon-esque. And some of Atlantean temples seem to share the architecture style of the Greeks. Did the Greeks simply copy the Atlanteans? According to Solon, who visited the Atlantean Mystery School in ancient Egypt to gain his knowledge of Atlantis, there's something that doesn't really match up with the real story. I'll be doing a dedicated episode on this. It's quite fascinating. Whether or not the Egyptians or the Greeks came first. Did the Greeks actually predate the Egyptians? It's really interesting because there's so much hogwash within history. There's so much cover-up, misdirection, deception, or just flat-out incompetence. I mean, let's not forget Hanlon's razor. Don't mistake for malice what could easily be explained by stupidity. I mean, we're dealing with fallible humans throughout history here. But if the Greeks predated the Egyptians and then the Atlanteans were before them, I mean, it's really tough. It's really, really tough And according to several mud flood theories, the Roman Empire, if it existed, it could have been quite recent, a few hundred years ago. Not 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000, not in the thousands range, but in the 200-year range. So, yeah, it's really difficult to have exact quantities here with dealing with some of these fringe topics that are just even entertaining these ideas are frowned upon by the coincidence theorists and those so hopelessly indoctrinated into their cult of authority worship and scientism. They can't stand any deviation from whatever propaganda they were beat over the head with in their indoctrination facilities of choice. And especially those with high degrees of indoctrination, they really can't stand any of this conversation. Most of them. Obviously, there's a few exceptions. There are some free thinkers out there. But yeah, for the most part, the goofballs that feel the need to comment on social media, a lot of them are just really, really heavily triggered by any of this type of discussion, which is quite interesting in its own right, which obviously a lot of examination there, psychological and otherwise, which obviously we do on the Mindshock podcast. So if it was the case that there were multiple advanced civilizations that were all worldwide, it does seem strange that they would choose desert wastelands, which means that there could have possibly been drastically different landscapes, drastically different environments for some of these civilizations, particularly the Egyptians or the Babylonians. And why would it really be that strange that humanity was able to advance to a certain point and travel the world? Now, I won't get into the entire debate of the flat Earth, globe Earth, Earth is a realm, possibly cannot even be classified. I mean, Earth is a torus field, and all of these things that are being explored by more free thinkers. Regardless of any of those things, if the Earth is some kind of realm that's much larger than we can imagine, and thinking about it in a 3D space is a very limited and possibly inaccurate way of thinking about it, regardless of all those things, why would humans not be able to travel? I mean, a lot of this goes back to the Phoenicians, and I obviously will be doing a dedicated podcast on that, but they were these, also checking out, if you guys haven't checked out this book, I believe it's called Maps of the Sea Kings or something of that nature, where there's quite a few anomalous maps that show that some of these ancient civilizations and societies, so-called ancient, whatever you want to call them, they actually did travel far and wide, far beyond what's currently accepted. It's really weird. It's like the ego of modern humans can't handle the possibility that previous civilizations traveled worldwide. Like, what is so... It's really bizarre. I mean, does this really come down to narcissism to a certain extent? Society-based narcissism as a whole? It's just really weird. It's really weird. And then if there is some kind of reset coming, and there's a massive reset, will the new reset start as a worldwide civilization or not? So that's where a lot of the funny business, so to speak, within regarding Tartaria comes into play, because of these similar architectural styles all over these different nations, these found nations that support our foundations of knowledge and buildings, literally and figuratively. Just a lot of bizarre stuff out there. Even Freemasonry was Freemasonry found on the free masonry that was found for free. I don't know. A lot of this stuff is really, really bizarre. Are there clues hidden in the very language that we speak, in the phonetics? Did it all go back to the Phoenicians? And how phony is a lot of this stuff? Plenty to ponder on the Mindshock podcast. Plenty more to come. Hope you guys enjoyed another edition of the Mindshock podcast in the Altered History series. If you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. If you like the podcast, hit that like button, share it across social media platforms. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, or rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. You can also check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.